Hello everyone. Today's session is going to be about the control process. By the end of the session, you will be able to identify the steps of the control process and describe the tools that are used in order to measure the organizational performance. I would like to remind you that the control process is part of controlling, which is in fact the fourth managerial function. Therefore, managers heavily rely on it as a backup of planning in order to ensure the achievement of the goal of their department first and their company in second. The control process is mainly composed of three steps. The first one is, as you are going to see, is to measure the actual performance. The second step is to compare the actual performance against standard. And the third one is to take managerial action. If we start by the first step, which is how to measure the actual performance and what to measure in this performance. If we start by the first question, what to measure? Of course, there are plenty of things to measure inside the company. An example of measurements could be the turnover of employees. You can also measure the absenteeism rate of employees. You can also measure your sales. You can measure your cost, your profitability, among many others. Of course, why do we measure them? Let us take an example about the absenteeism rate. So imagine yourself as a manager inside the company. And in this department where you are supervising, there are high turnover and many employees are being absent from your department. So it could happen maybe by chance for once or two times. But when the rate of absenteeism is high, this has an indicator. Maybe your employees are not satisfied, maybe you are not training them well, maybe you are not listening to their opinion. So all these are indicators, and the aim of controlling is to give you hints about these specific areas in order to help you, as we are going to see later on, in order to take corrective actions. So this is mainly what do we have to measure inside the organization. But what about the how? Of course, there are plenty of ways that you can follow in order to do the control process and the managers inside the company. An example of measurement could be like statistical reports. Another example could be oral reports or written reports. So all these are elements that can help you to measure the what that we already spoke about. But why we do this and what is their importance? What are the advantages and disadvantages of doing this? Let us take an example about the oral reports. So assume you are a manager and you send someone to do the observation in the factory on your behalf. So that person might do the observation, he might take notes, and then he's gonna tell you orally about these things. Of course, it's very easy to speak and we are all human beings, but you know that there is a risk of misunderstanding what you may add some words or you may retrieve some words, but these words might make a big difference. So always keep in mind this very important thing. When you talk about the how, you should be always very clear about how to convey the information. Another example could be written reports. Of course, written reports are accurate, you can keep traces, you can give a proof about this, but not all people can know how to write very good dissertations or reports, and this is very important and it may take time. So these are, in general, a summary of the first step of the control process, which is again measuring the actual performance. If we move now to the second step, which is to compare the actual performance to the standard. So this is the actual performance of your organization. So an actual performance is in fact anything that currently exists and happens inside the company. So if we talk about sales, so the sales for the months of January, February, and March, it means the first quarter of the year, regarding, for instance, Nissan cars, is 10,000 cars. So this is the actual performance. This is what you have actually enhanced. But when we talk about the standards, these are the standards. The standards, or a standard, if you have one product, is your goal. is your target, it's your objective. So what was your goal as a sales manager at Nissan company, for instance, for the 3 months of 2015, January, February, and March? If the standard was like 10,000, very good, you reach your standard. If your standard was 11,000, so you're down by 1,000, and the reverse. So this is the second step, and it's very important as managers is to always achieve the standards. But we all know that we are not living in a stable environment. So the environment is so dynamic. There are like external factors that may happen, political factors, social factors, environmental factors, among many others. That's why we cannot control 100% what we aim for. Plus, if we are good managers, we should have like a certain margin, which is upper limit or lower limit. So if you go and you see directly this diagram or this figure in front of us, you see that there are like upper limits, which is the maximum point, and the lower limit, which is the minimum point. Of course, this is your target or your standard. So anything that comes within this standard is excellent, very good, you did a great job. But there are also some limits, and these limits are also acceptable in business. And these limits are normally plus or minus 5%. Of course, 5% is not a big number, but 5% makes a big difference in terms of the type of product that you are measuring. So if you talk about a car, 5% might make a big difference. But if you're talking about pens or pencils, it may make a difference, but not so significant. That's why always keep in mind that this 5% is a good number, but it's not mandate. It means like you can work on it to be minus 4% or 3%. So as much as you are within these limits, it's fine. And these limits are acceptable, and you can easily work on them inside your organization. So this is what you do when you compare your actual performance against the standard. Excellent. If we achieve our target, we're fine. If we are still within the limits, it's perfect. But what about being too much higher or lower these limits? What should we do? Of course, we should take corrective actions. But you may ask yourself this question: why you have to take a corrective action when we are below a positive thing? Keep in mind, you are managers, and managers always know how to control. They have expectations, because maybe this 5%, if you took it into consideration, maybe it has gave you, for instance, 10,000 US dollars in addition. So you are like taking the opportunity from your company. That's why you should take corrective actions in order to avoid to do this in the future. One more hint that I want you to keep in mind: always, as managers, do not wait until the end of your period to do the controlling phase. So you should always do it gradually in order to take an action, and this action will count. And this is very important. Let us move now to the last step of the controlling process, which is to take managerial actions. So keep in mind that there are 3 main actions that you can take. 2 that are related, we will see how, and 1 which is not related, and it's a cause or consequence. The first one is to have an immediate corrective action. So immediate corrective action normally happens when things are severe. So you don't have time to think about issues. So you have to react immediately and to act by doing something that makes things immediately on the track. So I can give you an example. Imagine yourselves that you are selling flowering bushes and vegetables to customers, or green seeds. One of your customers will come and will ask about a seed for sunflowers. Perfect, you sell it. You are a retailer, a grocery store selling seeds. So your customer will take it, he will plant it, and suddenly you will receive a rose. But you bought a sunflower. Maybe it can happen by mistake if you mix the seeds together. But if second customer, the third customer, in different geographical areas where the headquarter or the main company producing the seeds is distributing it to its retailers. So of course you don't have choices. You have to take an immediate corrective action, which is to recall immediately or retrieve immediately all the products from the market. So this is the first step, because you don't have achievement to the standard, and here you are far away beyond the standard. Another way is to do a basic corrective action. So basic corrective action is mainly when you try to solve the problem from its roots. It means you identify the cause of the problem and you try to take an action that solves the core or the heart of your problem. So if we remain in the same example of seeds, you buy a sunflower seeds, you rose it, perfect. You plant it, you're doing well. After a week, you have the sunflower, a small germ or something like this. After a month, the sunflower dies. A second customer will do the same report. A third one will do the same. So here, you don't have changes in the seeds. You are still buying a sunflower, but the sunflower is dying. But at the same time, other customers are not complaining and they are doing well. So here, there is a basic corrective action, but it's not so severe. So you may send agricultural engineers from your firm or your company in order to check maybe the soil is not so good, maybe the quality of water is not good, maybe the person or the persons who are planting this are not properly able to know how much to go deeper in soils, because you know these are critical parts and not all customers are familiar on them. So this is what do you mean by basic corrective action, and you learn from them. So maybe for next time you can give like a booklet or a small process to follow in order to know how to properly do this cultivation and so on. So this is very important. So it's a very easy step to do. A third type of the managerial action is to revise the standard. So when you take actions and the problem remains, again, the problem is that you didn't achieve your goal or your standard or your target. So here you have to revise the standard. So the standard might be wrong. You might be very pessimistic or optimistic about your target. So you have to review it, because if you review it, you will be able to gradually achieve the standard at later stages. So that was, in brief, a summary of today's session. So again, we have the objectives inside the organization, we have the goals inside the organizations, you have the managers who set those goals or objectives. And keep in mind that objectives should be always SMART. It means specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound or time frame. So you have the managers who set the goals, so you measure the actual performance. If the actual performance and the standards match, perfect, you don't do anything. If the standards and your actual situation differ but within this limit, you are fine, you don't do anything. If you have a discrepancy, which is minus or plus, what do? You have to take actions. So you have to take an immediate corrective action or a basic corrective action. Once you do them, if you're fine, excellent. If not, you have finally to revise the standard. So that was, in brief, a summary of the control process. I hope that you enjoyed the session. I wish you the best of luck and see you next time. Thank you.